The history and benefits of magic mushrooms. Fungi have been on the planet Earth for around 700 million years. Fungi have survived multiple catastrophic extinctions caused by meteorite strikes on Earth and are one of the longest living bacteria in the world. Paul Stamets, 2005, Mycelium Running. Fungi are defined as any group of spore producing organisms feeding on organic matter. This can include any types of molds, yeasts, or mushrooms. For this project, we will focus on mushrooms, specifically, quote, magic mushrooms, their benefits, and the controversial history of these fungi. Magic mushrooms are not actually magic, but when you take them, it feels as if magical things start to happen. These mushrooms contain a substance called psilocybin, and when ingested, your body breaks it down into psilocin. Psilocin is the active compound that produces psychoactive effects. Psilocybin, and psilocin have very similar molecular structures to serotonin. Due to this similarity, psilocin activates the same receptors in the brain that serotonin activate, specifically at the receptor site known as 5-HT2A. Many of the 5-HT2A receptors are located in cells in the cortex, which is an area of the brain associated with reasoning and rational thought. This receptor mediates many different functions in our brains, such as mood, imagination, learning, and perception. Psilocin sits into these receptors and activates them, which in turn produces a feeling of tripping, which can alter your state of mind and consciousness. Mushroom trips usually last anywhere between 6 to 8 hours. Drug Science, June 17th, 2022, psilocybin, magic mushrooms. The use of psychedelic mushrooms dates back to the native people of Mesoamerica. Tribes would take an hallucinogenic species of psilocybe for religious gatherings, divination, and sometimes mental healing after experiencing something traumatic. The Aztecs used these mushrooms when crowning their new ruler Moctezuma II in 1502. The Aztecs described the mushrooms as genius, divine, and wondrous. Ancient artifacts have been found that incorporate mushrooms into their works, sometimes making it look like mushrooms are growing out of the heads of people. In the modern world, psychedelic mushrooms were repopularized in 1959 when a Swiss chemist by the name of Albert Hofmann was able to successfully isolate the active principle of psilocybin from the mushroom Psilocybe mexicana. After Hofmann's discovery, his employer at the time sold and distributed pure psilocybin to physicians to use for psychedelic therapies. Scientists and mental health researchers at the time were finding promising research and treatments for a broad range of psychiatric diagnoses, including alcoholism, schizophrenia, autism spectrum disorders, depression, and OCD. Unfortunately, the restrictive drug laws of the late 1960s restricted the scientific research into psilocybin and other psychoactive drugs. In America, Congress passed the Controlled Substance Act of 1970, which placed all substances that were previously regulated under existing federal law into one of 5 schedules. The 5 schedules divided the drugs into 5 different categories based upon the substance medical use, potential for abuse, and safety or dependency liability. Published by USC, date accessed was October 6, 2022, titled Overview of Controlled Substances and Precursor Chemicals. Schedule 1 drugs, substances, or chemicals are defined as drugs with no current accepted medical use and have a high potential for abuse. Some examples of Schedule 1 drugs are heroin, LSD, cannabis, and peyote. Schedule 2 drugs can also be highly addicting and dangerous, but are proven to have medical benefits. Scheduled drugs 3 through 5 have decreasing chances of abuse and dependency and are known to have medical benefits. In today's world, in order to conduct any type of research on Schedule 1 drugs, you must go through the process of getting approved by the DEA. Applicants must provide information to the DEA about their research, protocol, qualifications, previous research history, and the institution where the research will be taking place. These new applications were set into use early in 2018, and since then, we have seen an increasing in studies based around Schedule 1 drugs, including psilocybin. Before 2018, you were still able to conduct research on Schedule 1 drugs, although the process of getting approved was much more complicated and took much longer than it does today. Many new studies are being conducted today and are finding promising results that help show that mushrooms may be beneficial to one's health. According to a study published in JAMA Psychiatry, patients who received immediate psilocybin-assisted therapy was effective in producing large, rapid, and sustained antidepressant effects in patients with major depressive disorders. Alan K. Davis, Frederick S. Barrett, Derek G. May, dated November 4th, 2020, titled Effects of Psilocybin-Assisted Therapy on Major Depressive Disorder. This is a very important finding for the world of, quote, magic mushrooms and psychedelic therapies. Since psilocybin is rated as a Schedule 1 drug, it is assumed that there are no medicinal benefits to this drug. Although with the help of recent research, one could argue that there are medical benefits to the drug and that it should be classified under a different schedule. This would allow for psilocybin to be recommended to patients as a potential form of therapy and a way to improve many people's lives. In the previously mentioned study, participants took mushrooms on 2 different occasions over an 8-week period. They took a moderately high dose each time and took a higher dose on the second session. They were given 20 milligrams per 70 kilograms on the first session and 30 milligrams per 70 kilograms on the second session. At first, this did not seem like a large enough dose at all, so I investigated a little bit further. A gram of mushrooms can contain anywhere between 5 to 10 milligrams of psilocybin, so depending on how potent each gram was and the participant's weight, each participant was given anywhere between 2 to 6 grams of mushrooms. The participants each took the mushrooms in opaque gelatin capsules with approximately 100 milliliters of water. There were 2 facilitators in the room for each session to respond to the patient's physical or emotional needs throughout the session. The participants were instructed to lie on a couch, cover their eyes with an eye shade, and listen to a playlist that consists of primarily classical music. Participants were encouraged to focus their attention inward and try to sit with any experience or emotion that arose. After reading this study and comparing it to my own experience with psilocybin, I can completely understand and empathize with these patients about their new experiences and findings. I have personally never participated in a study on psilocybin conducted by medical professionals, although I have tried mushrooms before on a few occasions and can confidently say that the drug has helped change my life for the better. In the study mentioned above, researchers gave participants a large dose all at once and measured results over the following hours. This is the primary way psilocybin is used and studied, although there is another method gaining popularity and may also have long-term benefits. This method is referred to as microdosing, and it is my preferred way of taking psilocybin personally. Microdose, by definition, is a very small amount of a drug used to test or benefit from its psychological action while minimizing undesirable side effects. In terms of magic mushrooms, microdosing means taking a very small dose over an extended period of time, in most cases weeks or months, while still experiencing the benefits of a full mushroom trip. From my personal experience of microdosing over the course of a single month, I felt as if I became an overall happier person and found myself more mindful and conscious of the world around me. I also felt the benefits in the following days without taking any psilocybin at all on those days. This is known as the afterglow effect and is a common feeling among people who do microdose. I personally felt as if I had a better outlook on the world and I had a much more positive mindset whenever a challenge would arise. I am a firm believer and advocate that psilocybin should no longer be a Schedule I drug. Many Schedule II drugs, including cocaine, fentanyl, and methamphetamine, cause deaths every day across the world by way of overdose. Although it is possible to, quote, overdose on mushrooms, the effects usually do not last longer than a few hours, and it is almost unheard of to hear someone dying by psilocybin overdose. According to recent research, and the research from the 60s, it is obvious that there are plenty of medical benefits to psilocybin, especially when taken in controlled environment. I think the scheduling of psilocybin should be revisited by the DEA with the hopes that psilocybin is dropped to at least a Schedule II drug. This would allow for it to be more available to the public and is a natural way to aid with depression, anxiety, and other mental illnesses. There are anecdotes of people who experience heightened levels of anxiety or stress during their mushroom experience and did not see any benefits. These people did say that the intense feelings did not last longer than their session and simply would not try mushrooms again. Like any prescription drug, mushrooms do not work for everyone. But considering recent studies on how beneficial mushrooms are, as well as the fact that mushrooms are a natural plant taken from the ground, I think one can make a very strong argument that psilocybin has many medical benefits and would do more good than harm. Much of the population views mushrooms as a party drug or something that hippies take all the time to, quote, trip out. Although these environments do exist around the world, that does not mean that psilocybin should be viewed as just a crazy party drug. If people understood the benefits mushrooms can produce, especially compared to pharmaceutical antidepressants, I think the population would change the way mushrooms are viewed and would allow for us to take a large step forward in helping those who suffer from mental illnesses by way of psilocybin therapies.